At the edge of a rusted industrial compound just outside Dayton, Ohio, a night janitor named Joe clocked in every evening at precisely 11:31 p.m. Not 11:30, not 11:32. Always 11:31. The few workers who overlapped shifts with him joked about his timing, called him Old Precision Joe. He never responded to jokes, just nodded once and kept moving. He was tall, hunched slightly, with silver hair that clung to his scalp like the remnants of a forgotten war. He wore the same thing every night, a dark blue jumpsuit, a keychain clipped to his belt, and boots too polished for someone pushing a mop. He didn't talk much, didn't eat lunch in the break room, didn't sign the holiday cards. But every night at 11:47 p.m., he stopped cleaning, no matter where he was. He would make his way across the maintenance corridor to Locker 53. No one else used Locker 53. It was old, dented, and for 15 years, nobody had dared touch it. But every night, Joe would unlock it with a small brass key, open the door silently, stand in front of it for exactly 42 seconds, and then close it, relocking it with methodical care. What he did during those 42 seconds, no one knew, and no one asked. It became a sort of whispered ritual among the younger workers. Don't mess with Locker 53. They'd heard the stories, seen the look in Joe's eyes, sharp and scanning, like he never quite left the battlefield. Chapter 2. The New Kid. Ty Henderson was 23, fresh out of community college, and working graveyard shifts at the facility until he figured out what to do with his life. He didn't buy into the rumors about old Joe. To him, Joe was just a relic, a ghost of the workforce, probably some old factory worker with PTSD. Until one night, Joe dropped something. Ty was pushing a bin of scrap when he heard the faint clink of metal against concrete. Joe had just passed him in the hallway and something had fallen from his jumpsuit pocket. It was a small metallic object, worn and cold. Ty picked it up and noticed the engraving. 0142 with a faded trident symbol beneath it. Trident. Ty didn't know much, but he knew enough from his obsession with war movies and late-night YouTube binges. That wasn't just any symbol. It looked like a variation of the Navy SEAL insignia, an old one. Not decorative. Earned. He didn't say anything. Just pocketed the object and watched as Joe made his usual 11:47 march to Locker 53. That night, Ty didn't leave at the end of his shift. He waited. Followed Joe at a distance. Watched from behind a crate as the old man opened the locker and stood silently in front of it. Not a word, not a sound. Just silence and stillness that felt heavier than concrete. Chapter 3. The Locker Opens. A week passed, and then another, and then Joe didn't show up. No warning, no call, no substitute. The clipboard by the door just read, Joe sick, in someone else's handwriting. Ty couldn't stop thinking about the locker, about the trident, about the silence. That night, curiosity broke the barrier that caution had built. Ty brought a crowbar and waited until everyone else left. At 2:43 a.m., alone in the maintenance wing, he jammed the tool into Locker 53 and pried it open. The hinges groaned softly, as if warning him. Inside were 3 items. A pistol, cleaned and oiled. Magazine full. A black dossier labeled Operation Grayscale, March 1971. Restricted clearance, eyes only. A small yellowed photograph. 3 men in combat gear standing in waist-high jungle water, one of them unmistakably Joe, younger but with the same eyes. Ty sat down. The silence in the corridor felt colder now. He didn't read the file. Something told him not to. He closed the locker and left it unlocked. Chapter 4. When the past walks in. Joe returned 3 days later. He didn't say a word. Just clocked in, nodded at the front desk, and walked straight to Locker 53. He stopped dead when he saw the padlock missing. Ty stood nearby, broom in hand, pretending not to watch. Joe opened the locker. Nothing had been moved, but he knew. He turned slowly, met Ty's eyes, and for the first time, walked over. He didn't yell, didn't scold. He pulled the metallic tag, 0142, from his pocket and pressed it into Ty's hand. Then, with the quiet command of someone who had once led men through fire, he said, "Delta Protocol! Survive, observe, wait." Then he walked away. Chapter 5. The Quiet Legacy. Weeks passed. Ty noticed things he hadn't before. How Joe always kept his back to the wall. How he never used a phone, how he scanned exits, how he paused before turning corners, and how the other veterans, yes, there were a few, would always nod once when Joe passed. A nod that meant, "I see you, I remember." The legend of Locker 53 changed after that. It wasn't a joke anymore, it was a lesson. A lesson in silence, a lesson in legacy. And Ty? He stopped mocking, he started listening. He never pried again, but he started carrying the tag. Still here, just like Joe. The next morning, Jared arrived at the range early. Not because he planned to shoot, but because something had shifted in him. That coin, heavy in his hand, heavier in meaning, had turned into a question he couldn't shake. What does it mean to earn it? Lane 7 was still empty when he arrived. Jared set his gear on the bench next to it but didn't unpack. He just waited. At 6:44, the familiar rhythm of worn boots echoed over the gravel. Martin, same flannel, same hat. But today, Jared saw more than an old man with habits. He saw a man who had survived things most couldn't imagine, and chose to stay quiet. Martin gave his usual nod at the counter, signed in with that deliberate scrawl, and walked to his lane. Jared stood, not in salute but in acknowledgement. Respect. "Morning," Jared offered. Martin grunted. That was his version of hello. They shot in silence for a while. Jared mirrored Martin's rhythm. Not perfect, not yet, but getting there. After 30 rounds, Martin reached for his thermos. Jared spoke up. "You ever think about teaching? I mean, formally?" Martin didn't look at him. "You don't teach what we did, you just show up. Every day. That's the class." Jared nodded. "Then maybe I'll keep showing up." Martin looked at him. Truly looked for the first time. "Then show up early. Clean your brass. Don't chase glory. It'll run faster than you ever will." From that morning on, Jared did just that. Not just at the range, but in life. He listened more, he spoke less. He began to notice the things Martin noticed. Wind that wasn't there, posture that betrayed fear, silence that spoke louder than war stories. Weeks passed. Others began to notice too. Recruits started showing up earlier. Lane 7 became quiet ground. Not holy, but respected. One rainy afternoon, the range owner installed something new above the bench on Lane 7, a shadow box. Inside, Martin's coin, set against dark velvet. Below it, a brass plate. Still here. Martin didn't say a word when he saw it, but he nodded, and that was enough. That evening, as Jared packed his gear, Martin handed him a folder. Old, worn. Inside, pages, maps, photos, a letter. "I don't want it to end up in a garage sale," Martin muttered. Jared stared at it. "Why me?" Martin paused, then said, "Because you asked the right question," and didn't push when the answer was silence. From then on, Jared kept that folder safe. It never left his side. And once a week at a local VFW hall, he began reading pieces of it aloud to other young recruits, never using Martin's name, only calling him the man behind the locked locker. Because some stories aren't told, they're trusted. And Jared understood. He wasn't chosen to retell Martin's past. He was chosen to protect it, to be continued